Hello, welcome to DevOps Underground. We have PJ today from US, New York. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is PJ Haggerty. I'm really excited to be here. I am the head of developer relations at a company called Mattermost, and we'll get more into Mattermost later because it's kind of part of the presentation. But a little bit about me. As Olga said, I live in Buffalo, New York, which is the greatest town in America you've never heard of. Except you probably heard that it snows a lot and there's bad sports teams, but there's so much more to the city than that. But I'm really excited to be at DevOps Underground. Mostly because, when I was a kid, I had this game. It was called Scotland Yard. And the whole idea was like you were a bunch of detectives and one person was Mr. X and you had to chase Mr. X through the city, try to catch them because, I don't know, they were a murderer or a thief or something. I don't know exactly what they were. But the most important thing was you got these little tokens and you could use the tokens to get around. And the underground was the best way to get around. So this oddly, when this opportunity came up to speak here, it reminded me of that. And it kind of brought back a bunch of childhood Sherlock Holmesy memories. Of course, then I looked on eBay to see if you could still find this game, and you can, but it's like $200 and out of print. So I'm not going to get the game, but I will talk about ChatOps and other exciting things for DevOps Underground. So am I cool to get started, Olga?
Sure. The stage is yours.
All right. Awesome. So this talk is called ChatOps When It Matters. It's about incident collaboration and playbooks. As I said, my name is PJ Haggerty. I could tell you what the PJ stands for, but I'm not going to. It's the air of mystery that will it'll keep you thinking throughout the entire talk. So a little bit, I work at a company called Mattermost, which is a communication platform. It allows different collaboration techniques, different things, all in an open source atmosphere. So you can add it to your stack. You can put it behind a firewall. You can use it in the cloud. You can use it any way you want. Build integrations and plugins as you see fit. Think of it as an open source opportunity for communication and collaboration. We've got lots of great tools, and you can check all those out. And I'll mention a few of them during the talk. The other thing that I do there is I run a podcast called What Matters, heavily focused on open source. We just had a great episode come out today with the lovely and vivacious Penelope Phippen, who is originally from the general London area. But she and I have been friends for years, and we're just talking about open source and what it's like to be a maintainer and kind of that feel. So check out the podcast. It's really neat. It's called What Matters, the podcast from Mattermost. And it just has a lot of great things about open source and collaboration and communication that you might enjoy. So if you more questions about that, check out I think it's at Mattermost on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Asplenic. That's my handle pretty much everywhere. There's a whole long story behind that, and feel free to ask questions after the presentation about why I don't have a spleen and what the spleen does. I could do a whole other 45 minutes on that. So we're here to talk about ChatOps, collaboration, and DevOps. How do these things work together? And generally when I do a talk, and I do a lot of talks, I like to make sure we get off on the same foot, that we lay down some terms and understand that we're all using the same vocabulary. So let's define a few of the terms, and you might know some of this already. You might think, oh, this isn't important. I already know what DevOps means. But reevaluating the definition, literal definitions of things is really important to how we converse and how we communicate. So we're going to start there. The first thing that we're going to look at is ChatOps. This was a term that was coined by GitHub. At least they like to think that they coined this term. The idea is that you're managing your systems through a chat interface. And some of you might recognize, some of you, especially the older developers, might recognize the logo there, which is Hubot, which was one of the first chatbots developed at the time for a chat system called Campfire. Campfire went away, eventually became Basecamp. We talk about why there's issues there, but that's not what I'm here to talk about either. The idea, though, behind a chatbot or ChatOps is it's a way of thinking and working. It's not a tool or a framework specifically. So the way that DevOps is kind of an abstraction, it's a philosophy. There's tools that are involved, but it's a philosophy on how we work together. It's kind of the same idea with ChatOps. ChatOps is a way to communicate, a way to use tools to better facilitate our DevOps environment. So I warned you, you knew it was coming. It's a DevOps talk. This is DevOps Underground. Of course, we're going to define DevOps. According to the strict definition of DevOps, I'm going to read this. This is the dictionary definition of DevOps. It is a concatenation of development and operations, a method that emphasizes collaboration between the entire spectrum of professionals involved in creation, development, and deployment of software. And we all know this definition, and it's great. It's like super great, but it's a bit utopian, really, isn't it? I mean, today we think of DevOps as like a set of behaviors and tools that allow a team to function. I think that's a more basic definition and more crucial definition. And this idea differs a little bit from the agile mindset, which focuses on the ability to move a project along. So it's flexible, it has a flexible timeline, and that can be subject to change depending on feedback. That's kind of part of the DevOps attitude. But as a result, agile is small, fast, and open to change, but it's also mostly focused on the software development cycle. DevOps looks beyond development and encompasses all the steps from concept to delivery of a product. I always like to say here that the interesting thing is one of the biggest parts of DevOps, that number 4 right there, is testing, QA. Unfortunately, DevQuaOps didn't really work out as a word, so I think they just stuck with DevOps. So let's talk about what an integration is. Integrations are pieces of code we use to connect different pieces of software together or to communicate states between functions of different applications. So what does that mean? What exactly is an integration? And it can be a lot of different things. Originally, ChatOps was focused on bots. So that was, building a bot that maybe, pinged a service and brought back a specific message, even if it was just like 200 OK, 200 OK, 200 OK every hour on the hour. That's a good example of a very early ChatOps bot. But now it means things like webhooks and APIs and slash commands and all these other communication features that are really much more deeply technical that help us with connecting our various applications and the workflows that put them together. So what exactly do we mean? This is the last definition, but what exactly do we mean by incident response? Here's where we start to get in the really DevOpsy side of things, especially for the SREs who have been chomping at the bit up to this point. So the idea behind incident management is to be ready. Incident response is exactly what it means. It's responding to an incident. That could be any myriad of things. It could be the site is down. It could be things are partially down, or people can't get to a certain resource, or something external is causing something internal to not function, or vice versa. And when we say incident management is about being ready, it's not ready for anything. That's an unrealistic expectation. But it does mean being ready to respond when the unexpected inevitably happens. DevOps teams often create playbooks and things like that in order to ensure they are as ready as possible to handle situations as they arise. Incident response is all about preparedness. And this is where our talk really takes off. Looking at the importance of communication when everything starts to go sideways, when the least expected and the little, and we'll talk a little bit about why least expected is a loaded term, but when the least expected starts to occur. So let's take a look. Again, this is about communication. If any of you have seen me talk anywhere else before, you know that communication is a big thing with me. That said, there's certain parts of communication that we have to focus on to begin. According to Rudolf Kallman, who coined the phrase observability, and I'm going to read this definition too. Observability is a measure of how well internal states of a system can be inferred from knowledge of its external outputs. Great definition if it's a little bit esoteric. So clearly, this was developed from an understanding of engineering complex machines where moving parts were often internal and their dynamics could only be monitored via extrapolation. I mean, it's great that we have things like 3D printers and X-ray machines, things like that, so we can look into an engine and see how it functions. But you actually, when you're talking about like the engine of a car, there's a combustion chamber in there. You cannot actually observe that while it's working. It needs to be sealed off to work properly. We only know that it's working because the car is running and things are making sense. We're lucky in DevOps. We have monitoring methods and tools that are like so sophisticated and they're so widely adopted that they can handle the increasingly distributed and complex systems. So it's easier now to observe code and tests and extrapolate the behavior. Of course, all bets are off once your code hits the real world, but that's a whole other issue. The key is we can see these things, but we often aren't good at communicating these things. Even with great products that are out there, things like CrowdStrike or Graylog, things like you can use, Grafana, open source options. They're great, but they're always a separate system. They're always away from where the main conversation is happening, which is usually like in your Mattermost channel or your Discord. And live system observability is about this data-driven iterative process for teams, and it improves the overall health and resiliency of your systems, but only if you know what's going on, only if something has been communicated to you. So let's talk a little bit about mitigating the issue of live system observability. That's at like the top heap of every modern company or organization. Anyone who's developing an application, be it for the web, mobile, fintech, fun tech, doesn't really matter. You want to know how your systems are functioning, not just, and I think this is a part that confuses a lot of people, not just is my server up and running. That's like the most base level thing in the world. Is my server up and running? Cool. Does my code actually function on my server? Okay, that's step 2. Are the users able to access all the things that they need to? That's really important. All of these things need to be communicated to you, the SRE, the DevOps engineer, the person who's in charge of keeping it up. Successful tools need to give developers, DevOps practitioners, security operations, systems administrators, and everyone else insight into how the systems are functioning in real time. And they have to be built to scale linearly and efficiently so they can store data so users are not wasting their compute resources. So let me talk a little bit about 2 terms that I used right there. We're going to take a step back for definitions. Real time and data. So real time is, for anyone who understands the flow of time, kind of a myth. It's kind of a concept that's great, but we want to get as close to real time. You're not going to know exactly as something's happening. That's not possible. Even the best, fastest system has to give you 1 to 4 seconds before you're actually alerted on something. Sometimes it's really 1 second. It's hard for you to imagine. This is 1 second. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. That was 1 second. Between the time I said 3 and the time I spoke again was 1 second. There was still a noticeable delay there. You probably picked up on it. It wasn't a huge delay, but that was as real time as I could possibly get to communicate that silence. So real time, let's focus more on it just in time enough for us to take action. The next thing is data. The big difference between data and information is data is unprocessed information. It's just raw. It could be that, like that example I used earlier. So you set up a bot that just lets you know what kind of HTML message you're getting from your site. And if it keeps saying 200 OK, that's great. But that's just data. How often is it saying 200 OK? How often are we checking? How often does that ping occur? Are we polling regularly every minute, every 30 seconds? What's the right time to do it? See, there's information that informs that data, and the only way that data becomes useful is by manipulating it into information. So enough about real-time and data, but let's remember that as we move forward. So there's an important way to get these things to work. So right now we have our observability stuff, and we have our general communication set up, whether that's email or some sort of chat forum or even PagerDuty or something like that. You need to integrate these 2 things. They need to come together somehow. The importance of a tightly coupled integration can't be stressed enough. We, as humans, appreciate a good integration. We like it when things work together socially. Why would it be any different when we communicate with our teams at work? The most interesting part of this tool set to implement the DevOps philosophy is communication. Communication is what DevOps is all about. And the tools here are well known. I could mention and point out the fact that one of them is Mattermost. But a lot of people still use other things. I guess IRC is still a thing. Again, more politics we're not going to get into. But these chat abilities are the way that we keep the moving parts working together. So you build an integration that says, go out to my Elastic stack, find out what's going on, and then tell me in the firefighter room in Mattermost so that I know when things are going wrong. If CPU starts to flop at a ridiculous rate, or I start to see servers going down, tell me in this room, and the person who's in charge of taking care of it will take care of it. That's an integration. Way underselling exactly how that worked and how simply it was, but it's an integration and it works to communicate to us how we do it. This is a key to a successful DevOps implementation. There's also some things like chaos that we need to be aware of. And this is a concept that tends to jar a lot of people's minds. When you're considering DevOps culture, with your integrations, just like with your observability, you need to incorporate ideas of chaos engineering. So, think about, are you going to ditch your prod servers at peak times? How are you going to know that your platform, your observability platform, is catching that in time? Chaos engineering is great for that because you're not waiting for it. You're going to drop all of your databases randomly. See what happens when that happens and how long it takes us to pick up on it. These are tests that you can do, and they need to be done in production to really understand how it's going to work, how an incident will work when it actually occurs. Not everyone is comfortable with this way of doing things, but the benefits are clear. It makes our systems more resilient, And in the eyes of our end users, it's really the key to success. I'll also add a little note, a little anecdote here. Both of those examples were things that were done at Netflix early on in the concept of chaos engineering as it was being built out. And no one noticed. None of the end users noticed. So if a behemoth that has so much of a huge, heavy user base can take down half their servers at a mean production time, Friday night, a time when people are just going on Netflix at like 7 o'clock to watch something to deal with the drudgery of their day-to-day lives. If they can do that in production, I'm pretty sure that whatever you're doing, you can probably test out as well. Caveat to that, unless you're doing like medical systems and stuff, in which case don't do that, please. Please stay safe. Find other ways to test your systems. So anyway, to put all of this together, the whole communication piece, putting all of it together, you make it much easier to stay focused on resolving an issue. Integrations create automated feeds that bring information from systems across your workflow together in one place. And a central chat platform like Mattermost keeps everyone on the team on the same page. Creating playbooks, which we're going to get into a little bit, based on the chaos engineering experiments that you do, allows you to be prepared for the worst. Keeping a decent observability stack together with a great communication setup makes ChatOps work for your team and your organization. This is the route to success. Whether this is an ad hoc response team for an incident, or there's a dedicated SRE team that helps use your DevOps command center, having it all in one place is the key to successfully ensuring the stability of what your organization is working to deliver. And with ChatOps, that means you have to do it in the place where you're having all of your other communication. I know that there's, and we can probably talk about it after the talk, issues with, alert fatigue and things like that. And we'll address that a little bit. But let's talk about some best practice when building integrations across your system. So we can get started with ChatOps. Some of you might be familiar with some of this, but these are very general best practices. First of all, start small. When it comes to integrating ChatOps into your DevOps workflow, you have to start small. Automate one task. Everyone, this is DevOps. We love automation. We love to see things working successfully, functioning out in the world in the way that we want to see them. Automate a task, a simple task preferably, and something that's not part of a critical system. It's probably going to take some time to learn what is working and what's not, so you can ensure that you are still building things that you need to for your bots and your ChatOps and your integrations to function, but you're not taking down whole systems and you're still able to have the observability you need to keep the system up and running. So there's a little bit of chaos engineering here. And you want to build something that's useful, but not something your company is dependent upon right out of the gate. So start small. Start in your comfort zone. This part I'm going to say, and some people, sometimes I've done this talk once or twice and they get a little upset about this, but if you're a pure DevOps engineer and have been focusing on the functioning of backend systems for quite a while, do not expect to just start coding integrations because you know the domain. You'll need to learn some coding skills and integration skills first. The integration skills, you probably know, you're used to putting systems together, but the coding skills, I'll give you a great example. I have a very good friend of mine who's worked at some of the top level companies in the container, cloud, and Kubernetes space. He's a brilliant systems administrator. Rewrote grep and sed to work better for him. When it came time to build an integration and he had to use Python, he had no idea what to do. He was just not familiar with the language, and it didn't speak to the things that he was familiar with. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If anything, you're learning more things. If you could do it in the language that your application is being built in already, kudos to you. Now you're helping out everyone. And it'd also make it easier for you to pass on that knowledge to engineers who are also going to want to be part of the whole ChatOps cycle. So that said, you know your systems. And as you get started, you stay within the parameters of your knowledge. If you're specifically an SRE who focuses on the ability to see when the system goes down, stick in that range. Start there. As you build more and you learn more, there'll be time to get more experimental, to stretch out, to really deal with more complex issues. But to kick things off, learn some very basic and simple code and stay where you're most comfortable. Next, we automate automate tasks on demand. We love automating tasks. Am I right? It's the best part of DevOps. I've been to several DevOps Days events as an organizer, as a speaker, as an attendee, and the one word that comes out of everyone's mouth at least once every other talk or every other conversation is automation. Automating tasks on demand means as we get comfortable and we see the value in the integrations we're building, we start looking at ChatOps when new things arrive. So we get some new monitoring software. We switch from doing the Elk stack directly to what we're doing to doing some sort of, Splunk or something as a service, some software as a service that's doing our monitorization. We bring it in, we automate it right off the bat. We don't even get to the point where it's two separate systems. We integrate immediately. This allows us to start templating how our integrations are built and maybe even improve some of the older integrations that we built when we were just learning how to do this, 2 steps ago. Every time a new application comes in, it's a new opportunity to build an integration and to see things better in our system so that we can actually build a more verbose communication system to deal with incidents. Remember, ChatOps is not only for DevOps. So a little bit of an anecdote. When we were building Playbooks, which used to be called Incident Response Manager at Mattermost, we had some folks in the beta who realized that this integration, this ChatOps concept, went so far beyond their DevOps teams. They wrote playbooks that dealt with an outage, the standard things. Users unable to, a bad build goes out. Users are unable to log in. They built playbooks for that so that they were ready and they had the right people. Then one of our users decided to branch out and they created a playbooks for stand-ups. So doing your daily stand-up, references on how to put that together, other asynchronous tasks that the teams needed to perform. Especially with the pandemic, people started using it really, really in different ways. This automation made it possible to get buy-in from teams with no heavy lifting, and it allowed managers to keep track of activities. Remember, communications is not just a DevOps issue; it's an everyone issue. But at the same time, like even at Mattermost, where we like to say we drink our own champagne, we use playbooks to organize our events. So when we're sponsoring something, the marketing team will use playbooks to say who's going and what table and what's the size and how many tickets do we have, things like that, and then get people involved to bring in so that when the incident occurs, in this case, the incident is, DevOps Days London, then we're all ready to go and everybody knows exactly what they have to do. Communication, it's the key to all brilliance. The other really important part is to have a playbook for incidents. So when it comes to ChatOps, like without a guide, none of this is worth the code it's written in. Build a playbook. Understand, and if you don't know how to write a playbook, I did a podcast on what matters with Quintessence Anks of PagerDuty. PagerDuty has some great resources on how to build a playbook. Incident response is where everything's going to come together. You're either going to hit the wall or you're going to hit a home run, which is, I know that's a very American saying, or you'll get a penalty kick goal. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but something football. Either way, either you're going to be extremely successful or you're going to have problems. Either way, you're going to learn and you're going to have a log of what was successful and what caused problems. This learning can't be understated. Have a playbook. It's the only way to ensure success to the highest degree possible. So let's get into the nitty gritty. So we know a lot of these things are great and they're all perfect world scenarios. So maybe you say to yourself, easy for PJ to say, there's nothing hitting the fan in these scenarios. But what if I told you that ChatOps becomes more important when things actually start hitting the fan? Let's take a look. So incident collaboration includes best practices, which include best practices playbooks. Developer tool integrations, like getting Jira and Ops Genie to work within your chat stuff, getting Humio is CrowdStrike now, getting, Graylog or whatever your observability platform is working inside of what you're doing, along with the incident lifecycle management. Incidents such as service outages or cyber attacks require a collaborative response that involves multiple teams, as well as layers of stakeholders. And these are time-sensitive events. They could cost thousands of dollars for every minute they remain unresolved. I know we've all seen like big things about, things being taken down or the Bitcoin blackmailers that are always out there. If you don't have a way to resolve that issue when it comes up, you're going to do something that might jeopardize your customer trust. You're going to do something that might jeopardize your security moving forward. There's going to be problems. So you need to take these steps to build systems that are going to avoid future incidents. That's the whole point of this. We are learning. SREs are about resiliency. Your job is about resiliency. It's not about response. It's about proactivity. So with playbooks, you can kind of work with and resolve an incident and worry less about the logistics, as it's all arranged by the team before the start. It's important to note that playbooks have to be kept up to date. If someone leaves, obviously you can't put them together. So the idea behind like instant collaboration is to be ready. We talked about that earlier. Again, not ready for anything, but ready when the inevitable occurs. We create incident playbooks in order to ensure that we're as ready as possible to handle these situations as they arrive, right? But you can't do it alone. There's a lot of talk out there about heroes, and I'll get into that in a second. Remember, none of this is being done alone. None of this is being done in a vacuum. So the key component is communication, and the key component to communication is having more than one person. You can talk to yourself in a room all you want, but this is why you need a team to deal with incidents, and a ChatOps tool is the way to facilitate that. Having a team ensures a lot of things, like no one person will burn out. But also there can be a balanced approach to incidents. It's important to have diversity of thought as well as diversity and inclusion on any incident team, even while using a playbook to ensure a singular execution. So while you're creating the playbook, you want as much input as you can possibly get, but you don't want, once the incident occurs, everyone to be using different playbooks. So everything goes into the one playbook. It's like a recipe. You kind of pick the best parts to make your potato salad. And then you make it your recipe, singular execution. Also, it's important to note that everyone knows and understands and internalizes their role. And I'll give you a good example. And we talked about this a little bit when I talk to the folks at PagerDuty all the time. They actually have appointed roles. And one of the big things they have is it doesn't matter who it is, they execute the role that they're in. So if the CEO jumps in and starts laying down instructions that aren't in the playbook, the incident commander, which is a term that they like to use, needs to correct their course. The incident commander could be Joan from HR. The incident commander could be Susan from the code team, or the incident commander could be the SRE. Each person has a role. Sometimes you rotate roles just to keep it fresh. But the idea is that everyone knows their responsibility and how to execute it. Everyone gets trained and cross-trained, gets comfortable with what they want to do. It doesn't have to be rotational. I put should be rotational. It doesn't have to be rotational, but it can be. The other key thing that's on this slide is no heroes. Especially CEOs during incidents sometimes like to jump in and be the heroes. The problem with heroes is this. The hero saves the day, but I'm going to go on a weird tangent here. I bet a lot of you are into like the Marvel, and some of you are probably also into the DC movies. But you'll notice that both of those superhero universes, both in the movie universe and in the comic book universe, have pointed out the foibles of the drawbacks of the hero, which is, yeah, they save the day, but at what cost? So one of the problems with heroes, especially in the DevOps sense, is you have someone who always solves the problem. Someone who always runs in is like, I can stand this server back up. I can get everything back up and running, no problem. I will push the extra hours. I will do the extra things. And a lot of times in a company, they get the extra rewards for it. Seems like something you'd want to do until you realize that the problem might actually be the hero. Because, well, they can get it back to a normal state and they can fix it real quick, and they've got their bubble gum and their duct tape and they get everything up and running again. They haven't actually fixed the problem. They've patched up the symptoms. They put a Band-Aid on a broken heart. But nobody's fixing the bone. And that's what you need to do, is fix the problem, fix the root of the cause. Again, afterwards, you want to examine what happened and see what's going on. So while we don't want to lay blame, it's often necessary to take a look and see what caused the incident. And assuming it was something internal, remedy that issue. No heroes. Remedy the issue. There's a whole bunch of talks on this concept, so I don't think I need to go super much deeper here. Post-event analysis, not post-mortem. Keep it positive. And of course, Mattermost can do all of this for you in the same place that your daily community team communications happen. Check out mattermost.com/incident collaboration. It might now be mattermost.com/playbooks. Or if you just have questions, you can go to community.mattermost.com and find me, which is super easy. So putting everything together, ChatOps makes it much easier to stay focused on resolving an issue. Plugins create automated feeds and integrations to bring information from systems across your workflow together in one place. And a central chat platform keeps everybody on the team on the same page. Whether it's the ad hoc response team for an incident or the dedicated SRE team using the DevOps command center concepts, having it all in one place is the key to successfully ensuring the stability of what your organization is working to deliver and the stability of the systems underlying that very application. Innovation drives us to build better technology. We want to be part of innovating teams. We want to be part of better, safer, and more observable systems. We want to do these things. In order to do those things, we need to communicate. I've said it a million times, but I'm going to say it again. Communications is the key to DevOps success. And adding a ChatOps platform for incident response to your DevOps toolset helps facilitate better communication. With that, that's the end of my talk. I think I went a little fast, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Hi, thank you for that. That was brilliant. I really like the playbook thing. I run a platform team at Silver also, and we're very keen on playbooks. That's the thing that allowed everybody to go on call, not just DevOps engineers. All right, let's check.
I think the key to collaboration is, I mean, the key to DevOps is always let's do everything across the organization, but then you go to a DevOps event, and a lot of times you only see SREs and you only see DevOps engineers. You don't see a lot of coders or people from QA, and that's a real problem. And I think that if you want things to be properly communicated, you really want DevOps to be successful, you have to bring in all the teams. Everyone has to be involved.
100%. I completely agree with that. All right, let's check if we have any questions. I can't see any at the moment. Perhaps
that's
think of something later. We could just send it over.
Yeah, you can feel free to email me. You can also hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Asplenic. That's ASPLEENIC. Again, there's a long story there. I would like to develop that into a talk about incident management at some point in time. I think it would be funny. But I don't know if everybody else wants to hear about spleens and what they do. But if you do, feel free to DM me on Twitter. Just feel free to ask. I'll talk about it.
Yes, please. Thank you very much for tonight. It was a brilliant talk. I really enjoyed it. I hope to see you at DevOps Underground sometime again.
I hope so too. In person.
Yes, that would be amazing. Right, that's it for tonight. Thank you very much. Bye. See you next time.